So Joy, what are you seeing? Like, so okay, so talk a little bit about it. Like, because a lot of the pushback I get when I talk about forecasting for seven-figure brands is like, well, we have no data, like, so you can't really do sophisticated modeling. Like, so how do you
That's
think
true.
about how a small brand should participate in the idea of forecasting?
It just actualizes. I actually think if you're smaller, you should be using projections. I think that's like the most beautiful part. It's like forecasting is an exercise in execution. So you should actually be changing projections every day.
All right, quick thing before we jump in. Andromeda, Andromeda, Andromeda. Everyone in D2C is telling you that you need more diverse creative. Well, here's something that can actually help you do that. Motion's new AI tagging feature automatically watches, analyzes, and categorizes every ad in your account. This helps you see your creative how Meta's AI sees it. This ensures that you can quickly determine which messaging angles and visual formats to lean into next. Start your free trial now at motionapp.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm here in my new broadcast headset, making sure that my audio moves with me as I move. And speaking of moving and shaking, I'm joined today by the ultimate mover and shaker, Mr. Joy Sharma himself, live from where are you today, Joy, in the world?
Dubai.
Dubai, as always, where he is readily dodging the tax man. Joy has found residency out there in Dubai with his awesome merry band of incredible growth strategies from around the world that you may have seen me bragging about on X and LinkedIn this week. Giving love to Joy and the squad. How was Black Friday, Cyber Monday? We've done a bunch of recaps at the 8-figure and bigger level. What did you see in the 7-figure land? And then we're going to start, and the reason you want to stick around on this podcast is because we are going to talk about the 2026 7-figure e-commerce playbook. So it's in the title of the podcast. You're here to get it. And we're going to look out into next year and talk about the things that are critical for 7-figure store owners to keep on the growth path. But let's start by saying, how was Black Friday, Cyber Monday for your customers?
I think it was actually really good over Black Friday. I think the most funniest thing was, if you remember, we had the messaging this year across all CDC channels that you should be spending ahead because you're going to go and capture all that demand in Black Friday. We actually saw a lot of people capture the demand on Saturday and Sunday also. So that was interesting. And then Cyber Monday was good for some business and not as good for some businesses. Like, it was softer than Black Friday. I think part of that is based on the offers and how proactive you were with Cyber Monday. But that was my outlook on the total weekend.
Yeah, I think that what I like about looking at 7-figure stores is they always, I call them my little canaries in the coal mine, right? Like, they are, because so much of their revenue is driven through new customer acquisition, they don't get to trade on their existing customer base. So you get a good indication about the health of net new acquisition, how much customers are out exploring new opportunities. And so I think it was really good. There was good signs. And setting aside whatever I think might be the underpinning of people's willingness to continue to spend, whether that's a sort of unhealthy dynamic associated with overspending in consumer credit, the point is that they are still committed to spending, and we saw that in the 7-figure stores. So couple weeks left to really take advantage of the gifting. But what we're here to talk about today is looking forward to 2026 and asking ourselves the question, what is going to be the core drivers for brands? If you're a 7-figure store owner, what do you need to be doing now that maybe you didn't do before to reach that next level, whether that's going from 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, or even crossing over the 8-figure threshold? What new tool do you need to add to your tool belt in the coming year? And I've been hearing a lot of talk. One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation is that the 9-figure store operators have so much influence on the media in our market. And so there's these sets of tropes that I think are starting to get established that I think could become very dangerous for some of the smaller brands to absorb and start to lean into. So we're going to get through a couple of those today, the warning signs that I want you to ignore about what 9-figure store owners are doing. But Joy, let's start with, what are you seeing for the brands that are most successful in your portfolio? As you think about 2026, what are their points of emphasis going forward?
In Black Friday or for the overall year?
No, for next year. Like, if you think about the brands that are growing, where is their area of focus been and where will it be in the coming year?
I think you can divide it into two categories: people who have LTV and people who don't have LTV. Like, people who have LTV should focus fundamentally the most on creative and stuff like that, like having the basics nailed. That's what I'm seeing across people who are in subscription, have good LTV across, like, naturally people coming back. But people who don't have that, they need to go and try to maintain it and create it, and they're just fighting every day for net new revenue. So for people who don't have returning revenue, they're basically going and making better marketing moments, better marketing calendars. Their businesses that are in jewelry that just I think that's a good industry, given your margin is just like really good. You just basically have all the margins, so you can go and you can build really good offers. You can tie them in with marketing moments. They're going around organic moments a lot, which is like going on the street and filming, and like there's a football match going on, going and filming there and just connecting that somehow, or getting it in the hands of the team playing there. Might not be possible for everyone, but basically having an offer special to that moment, talking about the moment, having stuff for the moment, and just making so many of this. I remember this conversation actually, like the aim became from 4 marketing peaks in a year to 4 marketing peaks in the month. And I think that was like the best people in moments. And then if you're LTV, I think you should just be ruthless about getting an offer that works well. Like there should be some benchmarks that, like, if you have it, just stop. You got an offer that works, and just like focus so much like on creative, because you're actually in one of the most competitive meta auction places. Like I think the competition of, like, if creative competition exists as a statement, I think that's the highest in CPG industries. And I think it's not as high in apparel and fashion, like stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to unpack a few things that you talked about there because I think they do illustrate some of the necessary thinking for 7-figure store owners. So let's break this into 2 categories, like you said: brands with high LTV, which I think get a lot of narrative in the public. Like, I think there's a lot of conversation about the Groons and the Create gummies and all of these businesses that are subscription, super high margin, high LTV, that operate very narrow SKU set, right? And they operate on this idea that the entire game is get the front end offer right, scale the creative volume in support of it, and see how much you can drive at a profitable with some payback period. Maybe it's 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, and go, 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 go. And off you go, because you're benefiting from the subscription value realization into the future. That is like 0.1% of the businesses in the world. And it's actually like none of the businesses that we work with, I would say, that primarily exist in that. Or maybe a very small
Yeah.
subset. Of the 100 brands, there might be 3 of them that fit that criteria. The reality is it's like the narrative dominates the conversation, but it's applicable to almost no one. And so we're going to set that actually aside over there, because I don't actually think it's the hardest problem to solve. The other problem is, well, what if that's not me? What if my LTV is moderate? What if it's 50% in a year? What if my gross margin is 65% instead of 90? It's this sort of in between where there's this real question about how I drive value. And you brought up this idea of like just competing in the auction, as you have to have some angle. What's your edge? Why will you win in a room full of people at less than ideal unit economics, less than ideal LTV? And you brought up something that I think is interesting. So we talk a lot about 4 peaks, right? This idea that one of the ways that you drive disproportionate value capture is to find periods where you can arbitrage your conversion rate against the CPM change, right? So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is a peak for everyone, everybody's CPMs go up, but everybody's conversion rate goes up. Everybody wins more in that moment. There's sort of like an underlying cultural moment that we're all taking advantage of. That's one peak that you get, but the others are up to you. You have to go and create or manufacture the moment that drives disproportionate value capture. And you brought up something that I think is the place to start for most brands, because you can't really drive that much demand by just coming up with a random campaign and telling a story when you're a small business. And that is, what is the zeitgeist? What cultural moment can you append yourself to in order to become part of the conversation that exists? So Joy, being a global phenom that he is, tapped into football as his example. I think he's speaking to soccer in that case, probably is what he means. But the idea is that there's something happening, there's an externality to you that you can get your brand associated with. In the US, we're seeing things like run clubs, or these elements that are these cultural underpinnings. One right now, I'm trying to get one of our brands to commit to participating in flag football. I think it's the up and coming phenom trend in the United States. Or like you think about it as our friends Thread, we're trying to get them to tap into the Pottstown youth baseball team as a sponsorship mechanism, because it's like the most popular YouTube thing for kids. So the question is, where can you go trade on the audience and authenticity of a thing that's already existing that overlaps with your business to create a moment? Is that what you were getting at with the organic moments, Joy?
At Common Thread, we've been fans of motion from day one. Whenever a client shows up and they're power users of motion, We instantly know their team actually understands how to run a proper creative flywheel. And if you're not using Motion yet, here's the reality. With Meta's Andromeda update, you can't just lean on a single hero ad anymore. It's all about creative diversity now. How many angles you can test and how quickly you can learn. Andromeda rewards variety, pattern recognition, and real creative insight, which is exactly where most teams fall behind. Most brands don't have the bandwidth to manually tag ads, look for themes, or figure out what Meta is prioritizing. Motion cuts through all of that and reads your ads the way that Meta does. It shows what's working, what's not, and where the actual creative opportunities are. If you want the advantage our best operators use, get Motion in your stack. Mention CTC and they'll build your reports, train your team, and unlock AI tagging. Use code CTC10 for 10% off your first 3 months. Start your free 14-day trial at motionapp.com.
Yeah, I think there's a very old recording from you that people can go and visit. It's like the reason Kalo worked, or I think it was like from you on product selection, is like you just want to be the subset of 2 in trust, and that's it. Like then you just stop. So like I think it was between weddings and
no. The example you're
like,
using is I Heart Dogs, who are
uh,
my friends that run a media property selling pet products. They were the one that originally told me this. Is a lot of times people think about one enthusiast audience. They say like dogs is like a category, but what they did is that anytime they could find the overlap of 2, so they would go military and pets, and they would go after products for that audience, or wine and pets. They would do, and it would be like if they could create merch or little
yeah,
quotes and things that had this overlap of this very specific enthusiast audience, because like everybody's a dog person, but military and dog, now you're speaking to somebody. So there's this question
this
of
is
like,
interesting. What
yeah,
what if we actually just use the marketing calendar for audience testing or like persona testing for the ad account? Because that's like the new Andromeda thing. So like there are 54 weeks, like half them, and then find what are the moments that are biggest for those random personas that you want to test. If it works well in that moment, you should bring it evergreen to the ad account.
yeah, I think that's exactly right. Is this idea? So if I were to think about, you're sort of getting at this idea of like, okay, 4 major peaks built around big promotional moments, product releases, whatever. That's like the governing
Yeah.
hierarchy of your calendar, and those are long cycles. You're going to build and plan those things for 3-4 months at a time. But the real question is the in between. It's the 4 peaks a month. It's like what are the
Yeah.
unique things that you're going to say and do in any period? And right now, it's sort of been like into this mushy idea of just like make more ads. But I think what I would encourage brands to do is to actually take a step back and go, like create a hypothesis around some of these mini ideas. They could be cultural zeitgeist, it's National Hot Dog Day, whatever. That's like one idea of it.
Yeah.
The second is like a customer base, like you're saying, like this month we're going to try military and pets. We're going to find some overlap of that. We're going to try some specific persona and send a unique message into that audience with some creative and ideation that's going to be an attempt at going after that period. And maybe we're going to try a couple influencers in that space. We're going to try a podcast in that space. And then we're going to do ads in that space. That goes back to the Kalo idea where what is the trend that you can ride? For us, it was CrossFit at the time. How do you embed yourself onto you want to grab the train as it's running and you want to become a part of it, right? And so for some of these businesses, when you're small and you don't have the ability to move the audience yourself, the question is, what can you latch yourself onto? How do you become a part of a thing that's going like this, right? And whether that's pickleball or padel or, we're in the sports world because that's what we know. Golf has been a big example of this in the past few years. What is the trend? Where is the movement? I just saw a post today from Dan Pantello at Marpipe saying that men's beauty is like an exploding category. That all of a sudden looks maxing, which Joy is big on. Joy's a big looks maxer. He's getting the double jaw surgery here soon. And are you still going forward with the 6-inch femur extension, Joy?
You
No?
gotta cut this out.
Okay. But that there's a trend there, that there's a question of how does your product have a role to play in that? Obviously not everybody does, but the point is tapping into the zeitgeist. Where can you place yourself in the conversation in a way that's going to give you a disproportionate amount of engagement?
True.
Because the other thing to think about is like if we think about the core channels we're trying to drive demand on, there's primarily, and for a lot of you, this is one of the first 9-figure tropes I want you to avoid, is that if you are at $2 million, it is not time for channel expansion. It's not. It's like just take it out of your head for the coming years. Don't worry about AppLovin. Don't worry about Snapchat. Just block it out of your head until you have won and are driving profitability on Meta. That's trope number 1. Same thing with like product expansion. Like until your first product is making money, like we don't need more products and more SKUs and product development. Now, if your first product's bad and we have to start over, like, okay, that's one thing. But for the most part, we got to win with one thing in one channel right now. And so the question is, what is the surrounding way into which to insert this product into the universe going forward? But if we think about the channel, so Meta, right? We just talked about some of the like organic trends and things that you want to tap into. Search is sort of the same thing, where if you think about value capture in search, a lot of talk on X this week from really dumb comments I've seen about Google's inability to drive profitable scale. It absolutely can, but think about it as an XY matrix of volume and competition, right?
Yep.
So if volume is on the X axis, right, like how much search volume there is, and the Y axis is competition, you want to find the quadrant that is high volume, low competition. That's opportunity. And that tends to happen when the supply of search, that's a trend, an increase, a sudden exceeds the supply of advertisers, right? Like that's where you actually make profit. It's just an auction system. And so getting into that and figuring out how you can participate is critically important.
True. I
What,
think give people
go ahead, Joy.
framework though. Like give people a framework is like I think they should actually, if you're 7-figure, like I would just push you harder than 8-figure because 8-figure doesn't need it as much. But if you're 7-figure, you should do like 4 peaks a month. But like how would you break it down? I think it should be like go for it.
So let's think about this like for a season, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to use my example that I'm staying with. So let's say your thread performance. This is a friend of ours who runs a kids supplement company in the sports space, okay? Well, sports is a big giant thing with like infinite number of potential peaks, okay? So what I'm looking for, again, XY matrix, volume, competition, okay? If you go after like NFL men, like super convoluted, expensive licenses, no good. Not even really that much growth. Very mature product category. Okay. Now, alternatively, let's take girls flag football. Okay, girls flag football. Girls flag football. Like, let's just look up. We're gonna do a quick like trends. I'm just guessing here. Girls flag football. Nothing like real-time internet usage for a podcast. Interest over time in the past 5 years. Yeah, go look at the graph of the interest in girls flag football over time. Here, Corey, I'm going to share my screen. So this is like me just off the top of the dome here.
Became a Zoom call now.
I know, this is great. Like this is real time. There it is, right? This is what you're looking for. Okay. So this is a phrase, girls flag football brand. Okay, this is what I typed in. There's no shopping feed. Okay. There is one sponsored result.
Flag football.
Okay. There's nothing here. There's nothing. Girls flag football clothing from Under Armour is like a pair of shorts. This is
On
it.
third place.
This is a yet to be captured term where there's arbitrage between volume and efficiency, or between volume and competition. And so if and that's just one example in an infinite world. Like let's go back to men's beauty or looks maxing or whatever. Like whatever the trend is, the point is, where does your product fit in the universe of these things, such that you could position yourself from an ad perspective to an audience in an opportunity where you're not fighting a downtrend. You don't want to go sell cold plunges right now. That's probably on the other side of this curve, right? You're going to be fighting something. But the reality is that there is some way in which your brand can fit into the world in the future with the product that it has, in the channels that you're already on. And your job is, amongst those big peaks, to find those little peaks. And it could be, maybe it's an audience to help you unlock it. So 2026, number one, the best brands are going to find ways to tap into the zeitgeist. They're going to be a part of the conversation and find their place in a story with a customer that matters. So that's step number one.
Isn't that how like dropshippers win?
That's right.
Like actually, like respect to them. They have a worse product and everything is worse. They just ride trends better than you.
That's exactly it, right? And if you think about, like, when I think about another XY 2x2 matrix, I'm really going like full consultant on you here today, right? If you think about whether, if the y-axis is whether a product is a commodity or whether it's really awesome, and then the x-axis is how good the advertising has to be, like it's the highly commoditized, shitty products that have to be really, really great at advertising. And so that's what you want to kind of understand is like, okay, how do you win in like selling a thing that really has no unique value proposition in the world? Well, you have to be the best advertiser connected to the best ideas in the world. And this is why I think for me, the one area, if I were to sort of go back on my own recommendation around channel advice here, would be that I think what TikTok Shop and TikTok Affiliate is the cutting edge of this conversation, where that's where you're finding what The affiliates are so good at being just hooked into the trends. And then they message and map through that in a way that allows your brand to sit at the front end of that spectrum.
We should develop that in Status, to be fair. I'm sure like there's an app that tracks this.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is just a question of that number one. Number two, so tapping into the zeitgeist. I like Joy's 4 peaks within every month. And think about those as potential, unique, disproportionate value capturing ideas that you have, and force yourself to come up with them every month, and then build action into those communities as much as possible. Number two is I think that for many of these brands, and this is talking our book for sure, but it's time to actually begin to build a real forecast of expectations. Is that when you were small, you're just out there making it happen. You now have to make some hard decisions around inventory purchasing. You have to actually do things that are going to be risky because you're growing. So you're going to have to make bets on the future, and having some sense of a system and process that helps you to understand that is going to be important, especially for a lot of brands right now. Chinese New Year means that you've got a large window that closes down, and you have to make some of your biggest PO decisions today. And so the question is, how confident are you in your mechanism for forecasting? So Joy, what are you seeing? Like, so talk a little bit about it. Like, because a lot of the pushback I get when I talk about forecasting for 7-figure brands is like, well, we have no data. Like, so you can't really do sophisticated modeling. Like, so how do you think about how a small brand should participate in the idea of forecasting?
It just actualizes. I actually think if you're smaller, you should be using projections. I think that's like the most beautiful part. It's like forecasting is an exercise in execution. So you should actually be changing projections every day. And I think that's how you win as a 7-figure. And like, if you can throw a random number out and you can execute against it, you're still going to be closer to that number and just be ambitious in that number. And I think that even is still better than just saying, oh, we're going to try the best every day. I think that's part number one. That's like when you have zero data. If you actually have data, you have some overall outlook into what the future is going to look like. And you can be like, I don't actually like that. And the answer to that is that means you need to just do more work. So it's most of the time like I think this was a customer out of the first 10 customers. They came to us as a $2 million business, and they came to us and they said, oh, I thought you would be accurate on forecast. Like we gave him a forecast, and like 2 days in, he was like, oh, you're off your forecast more than 5% on the day. And I was like, yes. And he was like, I thought you were supposed to be accurate every day. And then after a week, he came back to me. He's like, I have to realize that CDC is a change agent for 7-figure business, because if you didn't give me that forecast and I didn't know I was going to lose, I would have never done that work. That means that revenue would have never came into the business. And I think that's like the key to it.
So this is so important. And this is exactly why what people don't understand about forecasting is they dismiss it because they think you can't be right with small data. But the whole point of the forecast is it becomes the framework by which you behave to become right. This is actually how you become right, is by understanding that you set an expectation, and so that therefore your behavior reorients towards creating that outcome. Versus if it's just a Thursday and you have a revenue number, is it good or bad? I don't know. Will you change your behavior in light of it? Nope, because you don't have any expectation of the context of the data. And so this is so important, is that there's 2 things that I think the forecasting can really help you to do if you're a small business. One is it helps to narrow the band of potential outcome, which some of the hardest thing to deal with as a 7-figure business is the volatility. It's way up, way down, way up, way down. So on both sides of this, like Joy said, if you're down, you become aware of it and you change your behavior to drive the revenue up. That's the obvious one. The other thing I'll say, though, is that I think 7-figure brands make a big mistake of all the time is growing too fast. Is that by actually providing an upper bound of expectation, you can avoid that thing where you just start throttling way too fast beyond your inventory capacity, beyond your internal team's capacity, beyond your fulfillment capacity, where you cause breaks in the system. Brands are just as likely to die from indigestion as they are from starvation. Because in this business, e-commerce is all about understanding on some predictable timeline, I'm going to place an inventory to buy product. I know the pace at which I'm going to sell it, the margin value that I'm going to realize, and then I'm going to do it again. It's a cycle, the cash conversion cycle. And so to think about this, the other thing that great brands are doing is they're patient. It's not to say that they aren't growing aggressively, 50, 100% at this stage, but they have a boundary, and they hold that boundary to being plus or minus target. You don't want to be too far ahead, too far behind. You want to execute to a plan, and that discipline, that skill is really important to build early on, as Joy is saying. Okay, Joy, let's talk about the third thing I want to ask is how are brands measuring their media efficacy in 2026? How are you thinking about how they should be making decisions, pushing and pulling on spend? There was and maybe you can reference a little bit about, I know Black Friday, Cyber Monday, you had a process by which you were just yelling at people to make decisions, push or pull, and you would walk around asking them to refresh every hour. Am I hearing this right? Did I hear this story right? Tell us a little bit about how that
I
mini
think
process on Black Friday, Cyber Monday mirrors how you think about measurement more broadly for these kinds of businesses.
I think we put a name to that process, which should not talk about it. But I think what happened was we were noticing a delay in attribution for some reason. Like it was just not instantly updating. So we had an hourly report of like, this is the aMER target, this is what the spend target is. What we also knew was that there's revenue coming later in the day. So if you're on expectation and it's like starting 8 hours of the day, you just got to go and spend more money, and it would actually force significant more spend through the ad account. And what we were doing was every hour, more like every 30 minutes, we were just opening Shopify, looking at aMER, looking at spend, because it's a single channel for most of these people. So you can actually do that. You don't have the concern of, is it email? Is it something else driving it? Because most of the time it doesn't. And every time it's email, Josh was with us in the room. He's like, no, I did not send the email. So we're like, okay, so got to add a 0. So that's what was happening there.
And so the key with this, and this sort of the way this spills over in my mind to thinking about 2026, is that when you are a small brand, and this is another area where I want you to block out the 9-figure, this is another place. Don't worry about incrementality testing and all these other alternative solutions. aMER is your guide when you're a small 7-figure store. New customer revenue over ad spend is the measure of the health of your media platform, period, full stop. Now, this is where you have to really, you're going to hear podcasts where I am actually like berating aMER as a real problem of a measurement solution for brands with lots of returning customer revenue, where it becomes very convoluted whether or not your ad spend is going to newer returning customers, and how it can really be a dangerous way to measure things as you get bigger. You will cross the chasm someday, but that's not what this pod is for. For you, aMER is the way to go. New customer revenue over ad spend. Live it, breathe it. And what you'll find, especially because you likely don't have a ton of organic revenue, is that your 7-day click meta ROAS and your aMER should have a very tight correlation to one another. And I would check that. Maybe even your 7-day click, 1-day view. I don't know. Check the relationship between your meta attribution and your aMER, and you're going to have a really great way to see the efficacy of your media and your measurement. And that's, again, your forecast should set up an expectation of that efficiency about how much new customer revenue you need, how much contribution margin you need to generate based on how much returning customer contribution you have in relation to your OpEx. That's the sequence, okay? And early on, you probably have very little returning customer revenue, so your new customer revenue actually has to generate contribution, or you're going to go broke. There will be no dollars in the bank account. And so this whole planning process is so critical relative to your capitalization, relative to your cash conversion cycle, relative to your expected growth rate. All of that needs to be considered in setting an aMER target. So don't let some third-party media buyer just give you a number based on what he thinks the market can yield. The efficiency of your dollars has to relate back to the amount of contribution you need to generate in order to continue to fund the business appropriately.
I think let's put a Josh plug that you also need a Josh on
Yeah.
by your side. It's like, send the email, I need it. We are
That's
losing
right.
revenue.
That's right.
And that's it. That's how you know actually organic. Like organic is just email for most people. That's it. So it's like, did I send the email? Should I send
Yeah.
more? Can you send more? Let's get it out.
And this is why, again, like there's so many things that without clarity of expectation can lead you astray. We're about to walk into the month of January where if you don't understand how your total sales from Shopify is reporting returns from the previous month, you're going to look on any given day and look like you're not making money. And if you don't have an appropriate expectation of how those dollars are going to come in, or like, did I send an email? How does my email calendar overlap with my financial forecast? So I know that on any given day, that email triggered that amount of revenue realization. That's not my media that's driving that efficiency. Don't scale into that number, right? This is why MER is so dangerous as a metric to use exclusively for scale, because you could just be deteriorating contribution margin because your new customer revenue isn't coming there. So all of these inputs, all of these pieces are part of the profit system that we help 7-figure brands to begin to understand the levers of growth for their brand. What are the things that I need to understand as we go? So, 2026, smart brands are moving away from the idea of just make more creative volume. They're thinking about mini peaks, audiences, the zeitgeist, things that they can tap into at the cultural level to be able to have a point of view on what they're trying to accomplish in any period of time, to try and benefit from the trend to not fight the resistance, to get some wind at their back, to generate more impact. We gave you a few examples of those. They are getting into better forecasting as they go, and they're using aMER as their measurement guide. So there you go. Joy, anything else that you would add, the playbook of you're seeing from brands that are working?
I think spend more in January than if you have higher refunds. Like that's actually for 7 figures.
That's right. Don't let the refund number convolute. That's why we use order revenue as the default reported revenue goal. Get out of total sales. Shopify will mislead you there. We're here to help. But as always, Joy and his team at the Global Accelerator, we have an incredible offer. It's $5,000 a month. You get growth strategy, creative strategy, Meta, Google, forecasting, all built into your business. $5,000 month-to-month contracts, no questions asked. We want to help you get to that next level. And really, what you're going to leave with working with CTC, you can go talk to a bunch of the customers that work with them, is you're going to have a foundation for how your business is going to operate. You're going to know it better than you ever have before. So you're going to be more confident in what you need to do as a leader, as a founder, as a CEO, as a CMO to help your business go from where it's at today to where you want it to be. So come check it out. Get yourself the profit system implemented by Joy and Squad, and he'll send you a cool teddy bear hat.
Dude, actually looks dope.
Thanks, everybody.